My sister-in-law moved in, just for a week, after her breakup. 3 months later, she'd taken over the master bedroom, repainted my walls, and called my cooking unhygienic. When I asked my husband to step in, he told me to be more compassionate. So, I quietly made a plan. I never hated anyone before Vanessa. Not really. But now I understand how someone can quietly grow to hate a person living under the same roof. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small moments that pile up until you stop recognizing your own life. Jake and I bought our house in Raleigh 8 years ago. It wasn't huge, but it was ours. I picked out every piece of furniture. I planted hydrangeas in the backyard. I cooked in that kitchen every night after work. It was the kind of life I always wanted, simple, stable, quiet. Then Vanessa came crashing in. She called Jake, crying one Tuesday night. I remember because I was just taking dinner out of the oven. Meatloaf, his favorite. He didn't even sit down to eat. He just stood in the kitchen with his phone to his ear, rubbing his forehead. Said she needed a place to stay. Said it would be a week, tops. I agreed, even though I didn't want to. But that's marriage, right? Compromise. Support. So I set up the guest room, put out clean towels, even bought her a candle to make it feel like home. That was my mistake. I made her feel too welcome. The first week, she stayed in her room mostly, came out for meals, thanked me every time. But by week 2, she started to spread. Her shoes were in the hallway. Her makeup cluttered the bathroom. Her bras were drying on the shower rod. I asked her if she was applying for jobs, and she gave me this long speech about how she needed emotional space before she could function in a capitalistic structure. Whatever that meant. Jake said I was being harsh. Then her cat started peeing on our rugs. I told her to take it to the vet or keep it in her room. She rolled her eyes and said, "He's just stressed. He can feel your energy." My energy? I was the one paying the mortgage. The day she moved into my bedroom, I came home from work early with a headache. I opened the door to our bedroom, and there she was, sprawled across our bed, sound asleep, with my husband sitting at the desk beside her, working like it was normal. He looked up and said, she wasn't feeling well. The guest room gets too much light. Too much light. I stood there in silence. My stomach turned. I didn't even argue. I just went into the guest room and shut the door. I figured it would pass. It didn't. By the second month, she was fully moved in. Her things were in my drawers. My robe disappeared. When I asked Jake, he shrugged and said maybe I'd misplaced it. The way he started brushing me off, it was like I was the guest. Like I was intruding on their rhythm. She started criticizing everything I did. If I made dinner, she'd make comments about the kitchen being too cluttered or ask if I washed the vegetables with filtered water. She told Jake she might start a wellness blog and needed a clean space to create in. So she cleared out my spice rack and replaced it with tinctures and vitamins. My cooking, which used to be something Jake loved, became this thing she constantly picked apart. The last straw for me wasn't even the master bedroom. It was the paint. I came home one Saturday, and the bathroom was a mess of paint cans and drop cloths. She decided to repaint for the energy. She chose this ugly pale green. Said it helped her anxiety. I stood there, staring at her paint-covered hands, and asked, "Did you even ask?" She laughed. "It's just paint. Relax." Jake came in, saw my face, and instead of defending me, said, "Maybe it's a good change. You know you've been talking about updating the house." That night, I made roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. It was how I coped, by cooking something real, something that reminded me of normal. I watched her pick at it, wrinkle her nose, and say, "Is this even safe? You never wear gloves." Jake laughed again. And that broke me. Right then. I smiled through it, but I felt myself go cold. Later that night, I asked him to talk to her. I said I felt disrespected, displaced. I said I didn't feel like his wife anymore. He didn't even sit up. He stared at the ceiling and said, "You need to be more compassionate. She's your family now, too." That was when I knew it. I was completely alone. So, I shut down emotionally. Stopped asking. Stopped pushing. I gave them the space they seemed so happy in. But I started making a quiet plan, piece by piece. They thought I'd given up. They were wrong. I didn't let on that anything had changed, but everything had. I stopped talking to Jake unless I had to. I smiled when Vanessa insulted my cooking or rearranged something in the house. I kept my voice even. I acted calm. Inside, I was planning my way out and my way back in, but not the way they expected. At first, my plan was just to leave. Take some time, breathe. Maybe go stay with my cousin in Charlotte for a while. But I realized something. I didn't want to run. This was my house. My life. I built it. I wasn't going to hand it over to a spoiled woman child and a husband who'd forgotten who stood beside him for a decade. So I started documenting everything. I took photos of the bedroom, her clothes, her toiletries, her cat on our bed. I recorded little videos of her repainting the bathroom, reorganizing the kitchen. I kept texts from Jake, where he admitted she was staying in our room because it made things easier. I saved receipts, timelines, everything. And I opened a private bank account. Every grocery run, I paid cash and skimmed a little. I sold some of my old designer clothes on Poshmark, quietly transferring the money. I took on a freelance bookkeeping job from a friend's small business. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then I called a lawyer. Turns out North Carolina is one of those states where marital misconduct can affect property division in a divorce. And letting a third party, especially a family member, live in the marital bedroom against one spouse's wishes? That could count. The lawyer told me I had more power than I thought, especially if I stayed put. So I did. And as I played the quiet, bitter wife in the guest room, Vanessa started slipping up. She started bringing men over. I'd hear them late at night, laughing, glasses clinking, footsteps up the stairs. I never said a word. Jake said she was just reconnecting with herself. One night, I walked in from work and saw a man, mid-30s, tattooed. Clearly not her ex. Shirtless in my kitchen, drinking from my coffee mug. He looked surprised. I didn't even blink. I just nodded and went upstairs. Then came the weed. She started lighting up in the backyard almost every evening. Our neighbors, older folks, church types, started giving me looks. I pretended I didn't smell it. I just kept documenting. Then one afternoon, I came home early and heard arguing upstairs. Not yelling, arguing. Voices low and sharp. I crept up the stairs, and through the cracked bedroom door, I heard Jake say, "You said you wouldn't bring anyone back here again." Vanessa. What's the big deal? You're not even sleeping with her. Him. It's still our house. Her. No. It's your house. She just happens to live here, too. I backed away before they saw me. That was the moment I realized something deeper was going on between them. I had my suspicions before, but now I knew. It wasn't just her taking over the bedroom. It wasn't just the emotional distance. Jake wasn't just enabling her. He was complicit. She was his escape. And I had become the stranger in my own home. But they underestimated me. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd leave. What they didn't know was that I'd already started putting the final piece of my plan into place. Because if they wanted to push me out quietly, I was going to push back loud and legal. It was around month 4 when things started to tip in my favor, even if no one noticed yet. I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Feldman. She's in her late 60s, lives alone, and always watches the neighborhood like it's her full-time job. She said, "Sweetheart, I don't want to stir anything, but you should know, I saw your sister-in-law screaming at someone on your front lawn last night. Looked like a boyfriend." That same night, I checked our Ring camera archives. There it was. Vanessa, barefoot on the front steps, yelling at some guy in a Jeep. She threw what looked like her shoe at him. The guy peeled out, and she flipped him off. I downloaded it. 2 days later, I overheard her on the phone, pacing the kitchen. "I can't get a lease with this credit. I'm staying here until something opens up, okay?" Jake said it's fine. His wife's basically moved out emotionally anyway. She didn't know I was standing in the hallway. I recorded that too. Meanwhile, Jake started disappearing for hours at a time. No explanation, no courtesy text. He'd come back smelling like cologne that wasn't his, hair damp like he'd just showered, but he hadn't used our shower. I asked him once where he'd been. He gave me that blank stare and said, "Out." That was it. So I followed him. One Saturday, I waited until he left in his car, then I got in mine and followed from a few cars back. He drove out past the Beltline into Cary, parked outside a condo building. Waited. Vanessa came out, wearing sunglasses and a hoodie, got into the car. They drove off together. I followed them to an open house. A townhome, 2 bedrooms, small yard. They walked through it like a couple. He put his arm around her at one point. My heart should have broken right there, but instead, I felt calm. They were looking for a place. Together. While I was still living in the guest room like a ghost. That night, I made copies of every video, email, and message I'd collected and sent them to my lawyer. I told her everything. She told me it was time. Time to make it official. But here's the twist they didn't see coming. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted the house. I wanted them out. So I filed for legal separation, quietly, strategically, and included a motion to have Jake and all third-party guests removed from the property while we resolved the financial and marital misconduct claims. Vanessa wasn't on the lease. She had no legal right to be there. Jake was about to find that out the hard way. Then, I set the final part in motion. I waited for Friday, payday for most people. That morning, before work, I cleared out the joint account. Just my half, nothing more. I left a note with the bank receipts and separation papers on the kitchen table. Then I left. By noon, Jake was blowing up my phone. By 5 p.m., my lawyer had filed the motion with the court. By the following week, they were both served with papers, and Vanessa got her own notice. She had 10 days to vacate or be formally evicted. Jake called me that night. I let it ring. Then Vanessa texted me, "You're insane." I responded, "No. I just finally remembered who I am." The next few days were chaos. Jake kept texting. At first it was angry. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We were just trying to figure things out." Then it turned to guilt. "I never meant to hurt you. Can we talk?" I didn't reply. I wanted everything to go through the lawyers now. Vanessa didn't take it quietly. I came home one afternoon to find my front porch trashed. Someone had dumped a bag of garbage across the steps. Nothing was stolen, nothing broken, but it was meant to humiliate me. And I knew exactly who did it. She kept posting vague, bitter messages on Facebook and Instagram. "Some women can't handle being replaced. You can live in a house and still not be welcome there." The worst one was a selfie in my kitchen, leaning against my countertops with the caption, "Some of us glow up. Some just go." I saved every one. Meanwhile, Jake tried to play both sides. He messaged me things like, "She's just emotional, don't take it personally," and "Can we try counseling before we throw this away?" The same man who let his sister treat me like a guest in my own life was now trying to patch things up when it looked like he might lose the house, too. My lawyer moved fast. We got a temporary order granting me exclusive use of the home while the divorce was pending. That meant Jake and Vanessa had to leave. No more healing in my bed. No more spiritual wall paint. No more disrespect. They had 10 days to pack up and go. And they didn't take it well. Jake came by while I was at work, trying to plead with the neighbors. Said I was kicking out my own family, that I was unstable. One of them told him to stop airing his drama in public. Another called me that night to say, "We're behind you. Don't let them bully you." Then, Vanessa left one last parting shot. The night before the court deadline, I came home and the house smelled off. Not smoke, exactly, but sour. Burned. She dumped something on the carpet in the guest room. Bleach and some kind of essential oil mix. Ruined it. Left a note on the pillow. "You can have your house, but you'll never feel clean here again." That was the final push. The next morning, I called the locksmith. Changed every lock. Installed new security cams. Called in a professional cleaner. And as the sun set that night, I sat in my kitchen, sipping tea, alone for the first time in 4 months. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot, because they still thought this was about the house. But I had something much deeper in mind.
Something permanent.
They thought once they were out of the house, it was over. That I'd get my little victory and go back to being the quiet, predictable wife I'd always been. What they didn't know was that the house was just step one. I wanted them to feel what I felt. Erased, humiliated, replaced. So I went after what mattered most to them: reputation, stability, and their own false sense of control. First, I filed for a fault-based divorce, citing marital misconduct. North Carolina still honors that. It meant I could go after a larger share of our assets. My lawyer had every text, every photo, every screenshot. Jake's emotional abandonment, his collusion with Vanessa, even her repeated presence in the marital bedroom, I had it all documented. When Jake got the full divorce complaint and saw the financial claim, he tried calling me again. Left a voicemail crying. Said he never cheated, that it just got confusing. But the truth didn't care about how confused he was. It was already in motion. Vanessa tried to play damage control next. She messaged me twice. The first one said, "You're taking this too far. You're ruining Jake's life." The second one said, "If you don't drop the financial claims, I'll tell everyone how bitter and unstable you really are." She picked the wrong woman to threaten, because I already had her police record from 3 years ago in Asheville. A drunk and disorderly arrest after she punched her ex at a bar. It never made it into public conversation, but it was enough to be useful. I sent a copy of it to the landlord of the townhouse they had just applied for together. Application denied. Then I posted a carefully written, factual review of her wellness blog that she'd started pushing online. Nothing slanderous. Just a note about how she moved into my home, disrespected boundaries, smoked weed in a family neighborhood, and tampered with food prep spaces. I didn't lie. I didn't need to. The blog went quiet within a week. Jake, meanwhile, started sleeping in his car for a bit. Friends wouldn't take him in. Not because I told them to, because they'd seen it. How he stopped showing up. How he let his sister take over his marriage and then acted like he was the one who'd been abandoned. The biggest blow came 6 weeks after they moved out. I sold the house. I didn't even tell him. It was in my name, only mine. I used part of the proceeds to buy a smaller place just outside Durham. Cozy, quiet mine. I donated most of the old furniture. Burned the rest. The bleach-soaked mattress? I let it rot on the curb with a sign that said, "Free." Stained with betrayal.
Dramatic?
Maybe.
But honest.
When Jake got the notification that the house was sold, he tried to contest it. Claimed it had emotional value. The judge denied him. My lawyer handed him every photo of Vanessa in my bed, every statement where he dismissed my concerns, every message where he told me to be more compassionate. He walked out of court pale, with nothing. I heard from a mutual friend that Vanessa eventually moved back in with their mother. Her credit wrecked. Her blog gone. Her little run as the queen of my household? Over. I never saw either of them again. And I didn't need to. Because the real revenge wasn't just legal or financial. It was taking my life back and making sure they knew, every step of the way, that I never needed to raise my voice to destroy them. I just had to be patient.